Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, your host today, and today a good classic topic. What's your most scary paranormal experience? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I'm pretty sure the house I grew up in was haunted. It was less than the cliche horror movie drinks flying off the table and furniture being moved way, but that didn't make it any less scary. My dad and I had the same imaginary friend down to the way we described him. He was a Native American boy named Kiki, I don't know how it's spelled, who lived in the walls. There were also the constant feelings of being watched. I would have the worst sense of dread every night as I tried to sleep. I've never felt that feeling since, but it still stands out to me today. Anytime I was in a room alone, it would hit me very hard. The hardest I felt it was in the back of the house, where my room and the other rooms were, but also the garage. I remember when I brought up the topic, that someone else pointed out the feeling in the garage too. I would have sleep paralysis like monthly at the least. I would wake up and see the shadowy figure, but I couldn't move or do anything other than lay there terrified. One time the sleep paralysis was a voice coming from the closet next to me. Since moving to a new house, I've had sleep paralysis maybe once. I wasn't the only person who experienced these things either. Nearly every person who spent an amount of time there that I've brought this up to had an experience. Outside of this, it was an amazing house, LMAO. I loved everyone who lived there, and some of my best memories are in it. But I haven't felt anything as scary as that feeling of being alone in a room since. Maybe it doesn't sound that scary written out, but like the fact that so many people I've asked about it said something is wild to me. Moved to a new house when I was in 3rd grade, and it had kind of a weird vibe, but as a child I didn't really care when we were looking at it before renting it. The first night at the house, my family and I are packed in one room because beds are still not done, and at 3 a.m. I hear laughing coming from the living room, and not normal laughing or creepy little girl laughing, no, hysterical laughing. As a child I just thought it was Santa Claus, but then I thought no, it must be a thief, so I stayed still and tried to fall back asleep. I told my mom after it happened, like a couple of weeks later or something. She said it's nothing, don't think much of it. Now you would think that's a stupid response and every horror movie's beginning, but wait till the end. So then a while later, my sister wakes up swearing she saw a scary face with horns as soon as she woke up. She was a 4th grader maybe. Mom also says no big deal, forget it, you're probably just dreaming. Another day I wake up to something singing at the foot of my bed. I was a brave child, so that didn't really scare me, so I didn't think much of it. Also, our neighbor was weird AF. Like, she would wake up every morning at 6 a.m. and talk to herself in our building parking lot and shout to imaginary people. Fast forward like 7 years later, my family and I are talking about this house, and I mention these incidents, and my mom says she knew it was haunted or something was off, but didn't want to scare us. I saw a white figure skiing in my room when I was 8 to 9 during a school trip in the mountains. It shocked me how distinct the figure was, not blurry at all. It went from the ceiling to the floor quite fast, like it was skiing down the mountains. Right after that, the girl sleeping under me in the bunk knocked on the mattress to ask if I was asleep. She then asked me if I saw the dude too. It was scary. We didn't sleep well for the rest of the trip. User Avatar, Level 1, Ragnarok 61690, 1 day ago. So, one night I'm home alone. I go to bed. I fall asleep. Later, during the night I wake up thirsty, so I go downstairs to get a drink. Now because our house is older, most of the rooms on the first floor are also pass-through rooms. The kitchen has 2 entrances, one that connects to the dining room, which then connects to the living room, front door, upstairs, etc. The other end connects to the back hall, and then the back door, garage, and basement. They're on opposite sides, and each has a light switch to the kitchen light. I go into the kitchen to turn on the light switch by the dining room door. I get my drink, put the cup in the sink, and go to leave the room. I turn off the light as I leave, and immediately after, the lights turn on again. I assume I just fumbled the switch and go to turn it off again, except it is off. I turn around and see the switch on the other side of the room was on. I noped out of there stupid fast, closed the kitchen door, threw the dining room chairs in a pile against it, triple-checked all the windows and doors were locked, then sped upstairs with my cat and hid on my bed. My cat fell asleep because she's old. I did not. A few hours later, my cat wakes up. At the same time, I hear creaking. That means someone or something is going up or down the basement stairs. My cat hisses in that direction. meaning whatever it is, she hates. Typically, she just looks away and flicks an ear if a sound bothers her. The noise stops after the thing finishes going up or down the stairs, but my cat continues to look in that direction even after it stops. Eventually, she goes back to sleep. I still did not. To this day, I don't know what the hell that was. 1. Came home from a vacation, was unpacking in my room. I had this just dark, unpleasant feeling come over me. Then I heard this guttural, gurgly, demonic sound in the next room. I've heard it in movies, just can't remember which. Think possessed little girl who doesn't use actual words. I immediately told it to get the F out. It did, lol. 2. When I was younger, I was working renovating a large building that didn't have power at the time. I was moving some things from one room to another, and I saw a shadowy figure wall a few feet behind me. 3. Rented an old house when I was younger. Lots of weird things happened there. You could hear cabinets closing in other rooms when no one was home. Creepy feeling in the basement, etc. But one night, I went to bed a little early while friends were still hanging out downstairs, so I could hear the sounds of people and music playing still. Settled into my bed, and I hear my doorknob turn. Looked up, but door wasn't open. Weird. So I closed my eyes again, and after a few seconds I hear creaking in the floorboards as if someone is stepping. Slowly. I hear steps slowly coming up from the door around the side of my bed to the head of my bed. I was too scared to open my eyes. So, any skeptics out there? Can you explain certain things where things sound like walking or a house settling? Could it be as simple as that? Or is there something else? I've lived across from an abandoned house for most of my life, and when I was about 6, I was in my living room and I looked across the street for a second and I saw a very distinct silhouette in the window. The room was lit with what seemed to be candlelight, and the figure looked like it was wearing a nightgown. I was entranced for a few seconds before turning my attention back to the TV. A few years ago, the house was opened up and the inside was a complete hoarder's nest. Nobody could have ever gotten up the stairs there, let alone get into the bedroom. That experience still haunts me. In a pub I frequent, the barman had popped down to the beer cellar to change a barrel. While he was down there, another beer ran out, so I toddled downstairs to tell him. I strolled toward the doorway, but when I reached the threshold, I was overcome with a feeling of sheer terror and couldn't go any further. I stepped back and it abated, stepped forward and it came back. I later discovered a previous landlord had killed his wife on that spot with a fire axe. I was a janitor doing after-school cleanup at a K-3 school, supposedly built on an old native burial ground. Never found proof of that. Anyway, I worked in this large square ring building with a square atrium, one go into using doors. One night, I heard footsteps from the other side of the building. I'd see vague shadows from across the atrium. I'd run towards the shadows from right or left, never found anything, and the frequency kept increasing. I left after cleaning every room. The next day I was called and yelled at for not cleaning anything, and I quit immediately. When I was about 13, my cat would always sleep with me in my bed. One time I was asleep when I woke up in my dream. When I woke up in the dream, I immediately went on my phone. It unlocked and went straight to the front-facing camera, where behind me I saw and heard a dead-looking lady screaming at the top of her lungs. This scared the absolute crap out of me, and I woke up for real screaming. I didn't see her anymore, so I reassured myself it was just a nightmare. Except every night after that, instead of sleeping with me, my cat would lay on my bed all alert, staring and growling at the exact same spot the lady was. I also always felt uneasy and unsafe in my own room and would have to sleep in my parents' room until we moved to a different house. I've experienced some crazy shit in my life that just happened out of the blue. I have 3 standout ones. 1, when I was working alone in a university library basement, books started sliding off the shelves. I ran away. 2, I saw a black amorphous shape form in the hallway at a house I was staying at. In retrospect, this might have been a weird trick of lighting. 3, my friend and I were sitting at his dining room table when a wooden figure close by flew off a shelf and smacked me in the face. I work in an auto parts store, and most engine-related components we keep in the back, spark plugs included. Now, somehow 2 spark plugs just seem to drop from nowhere into the wiper blade section. The thing is, wiper blades are up front, then 20 to 30 feet away behind a counter are the spark plugs in boxes. The 2 I found were out of the boxes. Nobody was in the store except me and the assistant manager, and it was a Sunday, so it was especially slow. I looked around for like 5 minutes and saw and heard nobody. I have no explanation to this date. Me and my ex-boyfriend decided to do a horror marathon. We thought that we will start with Blair Witch Project, as is it considered a really good horror. It was winter also, so it got dark pretty fast. We were home alone, and the door to both my and the living room were open. In the living room, there's a big TV on the wall, so we watch and then we see a light coming from the living room. This in itself scared the shit out of us, since we are the only people in the house. We looked to the living room and the TV turned on by itself and started randomly changing channels. We immediately turned on all the lights, closed the door to the living room, and kept hugging each other tight on the bed, still scared as F. I have no idea what it was. So if this was a supernatural occurrence, then it is what it is. But if you knew your lover was coming over and you happened to set up a timer on a TV in the other room, or maybe a light dimmer with some app, could be a good way to get a little bit closer to your man or woman. Smart. I like it. I have a ton. Don't know which is scariest though. Basically, I've lived in this house all my life. It's next to a graveyard, very haunted, and I've basically grown up with the whole ghost thing. I could go off on a big one about shit I would see as a kid, but I'll keep this short and in a fairly recent time frame. So I live in the attic, which I used to be terrified of because things kept moving by themselves when I was up there. Anyways, a couple of months ago I woke up and I got this intense feeling I was being watched. Not unusual. Normally I just tell them to go away and the feeling goes. I was just lying in bed, so I just swung my arm up and felt like it hit something standing over me, even though there was nothing there. After that, I just kind of rolled over and went back to sleep. I'm too used to this shit. When I grow up, in my parents' house every day at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m., there's always this strange noise of heavy wooden furniture dragged on the floor from my neighbor's house. The noise would last about 3 or 5 minutes. The sound sometimes is low, really like if the gas stove is turned on, I have to concentrate to hear that sound, but more often is very loud. I only noticed the first time when I was 10 years old and my house helper said that, oh, they didn't make the noise again today. And long story short, I made a journal which I keep until I'm in high school, maybe 16 years old. I didn't continue it, but it made me remember those exact hours the sound would commence. At the time, I also befriended my neighbor's kid, and he didn't hear such a thing. And when I asked his parents, they also didn't know that. I also came inside their house one time, and their house was so posh I think there's no way their furniture would make such sounds dragged on fine polished marble. It would ruin their flooring. Also, the same with the other neighbors, but when the neighbors visited our house, they can hear those noises too, at those exact times I wrote above. Our neighborhood was, for a good 2 months I think, gossiped about this strange noise. There was even druids, some kind of exorcist, but not Christian in religion, inspecting our house on behalf of the whole neighborhood, lol. After college, I had moved out from my parents' house and rarely came home. When I got married at my hometown, it was the first time after several years I'm sleeping in my parents' house. My wife and I can and still hear that sound and told my wife the story behind those sounds. Several years later, my parents opened and renovated the basement. The house was a computer shop back then, and the basement was full of junk from my parents' closed old shop. My parents told me that when the construction guys tearing up the whole basement, they found heaps of some kind of amulets or perhaps like cursed scattered all around 320 square feet of the basement. Priests were called, and after several prayers, the priest told my parents that the evil spirit was gone. It looked like a grumpy ex-employee back then hated my family so much, he or she put those curse. Said it was to bring misfortune to the residents, etc. We just think it might be a coincidence. For 26 plus years, my parents started and failed a lot of businesses living in that house. I lost count. All is good now, but after the revelation, I'm easily spooked of hearing wooden furniture dragged on the concrete. Yes, when I was 5 to 7-ish, I was very annoying, extremely annoying, that my brother would make me do useless activities or trick me into a waiting game. One of these games would be the elevator. I went into a non-lit closet, my brother would say, wait for the next floor, or something along those lines, and I'd wait for 15 minutes until I realized I was tricked. Well, one day, I played this magnificent game. I sat in the closet for 8 minutes feeling scared. which was strange since I never did feel scared. Then on the other side, an umbrella that was held up by a hook that curved upwards fell down. I shat myself and ran outside crying. Nobody believed me. Then I learned the lesson to never play the elevator game. Mate and I were playing table tennis in the back shed at 2 a.m., talking about ghosts, etc. Surely if they were real, we'd have known about it by now. Then all the lights started flickering. We both bolted for the house. Lights flickered some more, then stopped. We then had to go walk back out to the back shed and turn the lights off and pull it shut. I reckon I'd have given Usain Bolt a run for his money that night. When I was a small child, I left my bedroom one night to use the bathroom, and as I passed through the living room, I saw a shadow person sitting in the recliner in the corner. I remember being confused as to why my dad was sitting in the dark in the middle of the night, and then being terrified when I realized it wasn't my father. I've had various other encounters throughout my life, including a bunch of bizarre experiences in an apartment I lived in up until just before COVID. My house is around 120 years old in the South Wales valleys. It's fair to say it's seen a lot of history. When you come out of the bathroom and turn left, you see down the stairs and into my bedroom along the landing. My bedroom light was on and the door was open, so every day lit up and clearly visible. I came out of the bathroom, turned left, and walked to the top of the stairs before the slight left dogleg to my room. A blackness was coming up the stairs, total blackness, an absence of light coming at me. I was rooted to the spot. I literally could not move my feet. As the blackness came at me, it started flapping my arms around like my head, as you would be beset by a swarm of wasps. As the blackness passed me, it vanished completely. I ran into my room and shut the door very quickly, and stayed there until morning. The closest thing I have seen to this was a train entering a tunnel and the blackness seemingly rushing up to the train compartment. During all this, there wasn't one sound. I have two, but the one that sticks with me today is when I was a kid. I was in elementary school, and I had woken up in the night. I shared a room with my second older sister. The house was set up where we had two entryways to our room. One door led straight into the laundry room that connected to the kitchen. The other I had to walk through my older sister's room to then into the living room. Anyway, like I said, I was in elementary school. I had woken up in the middle of the night. The laundry or kitchen door was open, and I noticed the kitchen light was on. I instantly figured it was my mom or dad awake in the kitchen. That's when I noticed the figure hanging on the door. I couldn't see the facial features cause the lighting was bad. Best way to describe its shape, it had the face shape of Momo, just a bit longer, and the body of Randall from Monsters, Inc. It was all black with red eyes. I noticed it was looking into the kitchen, possibly where one of my parents were. First thing I did was start throwing stuff at it to get it to look at me. Didn't have a plan, but damn it, I wasn't going to let that thing hurt my family. After my horrible attempts of trying to hit it, I climbed down from the top bunk bed and slowly and quietly made my way to the kitchen, going through my older sister's room. Once in the living room, I turned to my right to face the entryway of the kitchen. My mom was sitting at the dining room table doing something, can't remember. I looked up and made eye contact with the thing, and it squinted its eyes at me like I had ruined their plan. My mom said something to me, making me break eye contact with it, but I could still feel it looking at me. I was terrified to go back to sleep because I was on high alert to make sure things weren't going to come get me for messing up whatever plans it had. I thought I almost ran someone over. There was one night I was coming home from work and we got out later than normal. To preface, I work for an ambulance company, so some patient transfers take longer than others. So I get out of work pretty late, 10 to 10:30. As I'm driving, I suddenly see a thin woman wearing a white dress in the middle of the road. I slam on my brakes and body lurches forward because of the inertia. But by the time I lift my head to look for her, there was no one there. And the road I was on was pretty spacious. If she were to hide, she would have had to have booked it a good 25 to 30 feet towards the forest. I continued to drive home, trying to convince myself that it must have been some light reflection or something. However, I knew deep down I saw something. I saw a head, shoulders, dark eyeliner. Creepy. So you saw someone in the road that had a head, shoulders, and dark eyeliner? Sounds like at least a handful of my exes. I had a dream where I struggled with a force holding my back. I picked it up from my back, and it was just a grayish white forearm without a body. I held its hand and twisted its wrist. I heard a horrible, deep scratching. It continued till a second between consciousness and unconsciousness made me wonder if it was Smith or the neighbor's construction work getting into my dream. Not sure if it fits here, but it was something. Okay, so it's a crisp October day, and I'm on the bus with my friends. We were cool, so we sat at the back. Anyway, we were halfway through the ride, and somehow one of my friends, I'll call him Caleb, points out something at the very back behind the seat. My other friend, he'll be John, picks it up, and it was a doll. And this wasn't a modern doll, plastic, cute pigtails and shit. No, this was an old doll. Creepy eyes, stringy hair, weird dress that looks like fine china. To summarize, it looked like the original Annabelle doll. Search it up to see, I guess. I'm smart, so I'm like, hell nah, I'm not gonna touch it. At this point, everyone at the back is screaming. Bus driver stops the bus, comes to the back and starts to yell. We explain that there's a creepy doll. He says it's probably from a different kid at a different school. We leave it at that. The next day we get on the bus. There it is again at the back. We asked the bus driver. He said it didn't belong to someone else. A couple stops later, John comes on, the one who touched the doll. Today he has a cast around his arm. Apparently he tripped and twisted his wrist or something. That's definitely not a coincidence. Caleb seemed to have thought so too. When he told John, John said he was overreacting, and he even threw the doll at him. Next day, Caleb didn't come to school. We're worried now because it's spooky season, there was a creepy doll, John twisted his wrist, and Caleb didn't show up to school. 2 days after that, Caleb finally shows up to school. He sprained his ankle. It's definitely not a coincidence at this point. We're all pretty scared. The next day, the doll is gone. The bus driver said he didn't remove it, and it was nowhere else on the bus. I don't remember much after that because it was elementary, but we stopped sitting at the back for the rest of the semester. We also found a button like the one on the doll's dress in June before school ended.